Okay, it's 4:30. I'm calling the meeting to order and acknowledge that the District of Tofino operates within the territory of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation, Tla-o-qui-aht. Notice to attendees that the meeting is being video recorded and will be published on the District of Tofino's channel. Notice to virtual attendees to sign up for public comment question period using the Q&A function in Zoom. To register, participants are required to enter their full name, residential address, and the agenda item they wish to speak to. And through unanimous consent, if there are no objections, I'll move that pursuant to section 15 of the District of Tofino Meeting Procedure Bylaw number 1229/2016 as amended, the March 11, 2025 regular meeting be held electronically via Zoom and live broadcasted on the District of Tofino's YouTube channel, and that the facility provided for the public to watch and hear the meeting be located on Tla-o-qui-aht Sound Theatre, 380 Campbell Street in Tofino, BC. Seeing no objection, that motion is carried. Before we get to 3.1, I'm going to invite Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I just want to inform Council and Mayor that I'd like to withdraw my conflict of interest declaration made at the February 25th regular council meeting regarding my pecuniary interest relating to my business, so I can participate in any discussion regarding short-term rentals on the agenda today. I have obtained a legal opinion to support my withdrawal of this conflict of interest and can now declare that the conflict of interest no longer exists.
Thank you. We're moving on to 3.1. If there are no objections, I move that March 11, 2025 regular council agenda be adopted. Getting no objection, that motion is carried. Consent agenda. Also through unanimous consent, move that item 4.1 of the consent agenda on the regular council meeting held at March 11, 2025 be approved. Steve. That motion's carried. So reports. The mayor's report. Well, we've got a special, couple special people here. Wayne and Donnie. Wayne and Donnie. Right there. This is the first time we've done this in this setting, so we're going with the flow. But before I get to give you these, I get to say something nice to you. So it's an honor to stand here today and recognize two outstanding individuals who have dedicated 25 years of service each to the Tofino Volunteer Fire Department and this community. Dwayne Bell and Donnie Collins joined the department back in 1999.
And the uniform still fits.
Back when we let 10-year-olds join.
And for the past quarter of a century, they have exemplified what it means to be committed, selfless, and community-minded. Being a volunteer firefighter is no small commitment. It means responding to at a moment's notice, braving dangerous conditions, and putting the safety of others before your own. But Dwayne and Donnie have done so much more than just answer calls. They have been leaders, mentors, role models, always finding a way to support the community beyond their duties in their firefighting uniforms. Dwayne is president of the Tofino Fire Society, as president of the Tofino Fire Society since 2018, has spearheaded fundraising efforts, events, and community initiatives, ensuring that our fire department remains strong and well supported. Many here may also know him from Rhino Coffee House. His long-standing local business, or through his work with the Tofino Long Beach Chamber of Commerce and other volunteer organizations. In 2019, his peers recognized his dedication by naming Dwayne Firefighter of the Year. Donnie has balanced his years of service in the fire department with an equally impressive record of commitment to the community. For nearly a decade, he worked on call with BC Ambulance. I can It's great. All while running his general contracting business and helping on his family farm. His leadership and dedication earned him the title of Firefighter of the Year in 2003 and the District of Tofino's Volunteer of the Year in 2013. Wayne and Donnie have given countless hours, tons of energy and heart to this town. They have responded to emergencies, supported their fellow firefighters, mentored new recruits, and helped shape the fire department into what it is today. And it is an exceptionally great fire department, I gotta say. On behalf of the District of Tofino, your fellow firefighters, and the entire community, we all extend our deepest gratitude for your dedication, sacrifice, and unwavering service over these past 25 years. Wayne and Donnie, your impact on Tofino will be felt for generations to come. Thanks for everything you have done. It is my great privilege to present you both with these 25-year service. Good. So we're gonna get, I guess I'm
All
right in front of here. And then all of council, stand up and push the chairs away. Good, Mayor Law, want to come in front? Oh, in front? Oh, yeah, I guess so. All right. Right. A lot of everybody. Oh.
Okay, okay.
We're gonna do in the middle, Mayor Law. Okay. Right here. Guys, nice and tight, as tight as you can. Breathe. Yeah. Thank you.
Unless you want to hang around, it was.
Oh, yeah, if there's empty chairs, it'd be great, if people could sit in the chairs. That are right there. If possible. Be good to keep the pathway to the door. Basically. If you just make sure there's room right there, if somebody has to exit, they have a clear shot to the door. There's also exit to the back. All right, moving on to the mayor's report. Just want to say that I understand it's a tense time, tense locally. It's also tense nationally. Lots going on. Tariffs, threats of annexation, and our own local issues. As mayor, it is my job and responsibility to run these meetings according to our meeting procedures bylaw, and also to maintain order and decorum. And even though I know that there's a lot of feelings going around from a lot of many people for a lot of different reasons, I do ask people to be respectful, to maintain decorum, and civility. And this is council's meeting. This is where council gets to debate, to discuss with each other and to hear. So that's my request from all present. Moving on to public comment on agenda items. I do have several people signed up here, but I'm going to ask Ms. Pelche to make an open call.
Thank you, Mayor Law. I will now make an open call for comments. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online that would like to comment, you can do so now using the Q&A function. Before making a comment, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to. I will now do a call calling once, calling twice, calling it 3 times. No one else.
Okay, super. Now I've got 1, 2, 5 people. So I've hit 5 people signed up and I'm going to go through the list. We have 10 minutes. Each person has 2 minutes, up to 2 minutes. People do not have to go over, use the full 2 minutes. They can speak as little as they like. And we will put you on a timer. So Ms. Pelche, would you like to give the instructions?
Yes, please state your name, your address, and the agenda item you are speaking to.
So first up, I have Mr. Koreski. Patrick.
Good afternoon. My name is Patrick Koreski. I live at 210 First Street. I'm the tenant and permanent resident there now. I moved to, well, for one thing, I really struggled with this and what to say, and I'm still struggling with it, and I'm fairly nervous. I moved to the West Coast back in 1970. I've seen many changes. About 8 years ago, I moved to Port Alberni because I felt Tofino was quite busy and I felt uncomfortable. Since then, though, I have moved back. And as I was moving my belongings, I realized I was moving home. This is my home, and I was happy to move back. I've seen a lot of improvements here. Thank you to this council and previous councils for those improvements. It is a very unique and beautiful place to live, to have my children live, to have 4 of my 5 grandchildren live. Some of the families, they may even have great-grandchildren live here, but I'm not one of them. Now to Bill 35 and the hosting requirement. There's been new information that was gained recently after you made your initial decision to opt in. I would ask you to reconsider that. As a permanent resident tenant, it seems Bill 35 hosting requirements require me to manage or at least run the business of this short-term rental. The fact that my SIN has been asked for implies, and our accountant has confirmed that I will become basically the owner of the business and almost like the owner of the property again. At 85, I'm tired of owning property. I sold my property in Port Alberni. I was happy to. I do not have a home. I do not have the responsibilities of paying the hydro taxes on it, maintenance, on and on. I just pay rent once a month, and I'm happy to do so.
Hello?
Yep. Oh, sorry, I'm sorry, it is over. Sorry, I missed the. No, please. Sorry, you're over your 2 minutes.
Already?
You're 2.5 minutes, and I let you go over by 40 minutes, so thanks very much.
You'd probably like the last closing comment.
We keep it to 2 minutes, and I don't accept comments from the gallery. And just to let you know. Thank you, Mr. Koreski. Next is we have Ms. Haas. Just a note, I look at that clock up there normally. I shouldn't be looking at the clock there. And
hello, Lisa Haas, 918 Black Bear Lane, speaking to agenda item 10.1. For the past 13 years, we've operated a short-term rental on our property. However, many homeowners who are also compliant with the district's bylaws requiring long-term suites for tenants have found the provincial registration process confusing, with some even being denied their registration. There is conflicting information coming from multiple government agencies, and our council was not fully aware of the registration requirements despite their decision to opt in. Tofino is a tourism-dependent town, and local businesses rely on the busy summer months for revenue. Many face losses in the off-season, which highlights how crucial tourism is for supporting local businesses and sustaining jobs in the community. Have you considered the impact on tour operators, surf schools, restaurants, and retail stores if legal short-term rentals are forced to cancel their fully booked summers when they are denied their registrations? Not to mention the families who have booked their vacations in Tofino and now have nowhere to stay. Tofino has been a tourist destination for decades. My husband was born and raised here, with his family moving here in the 1960s. When he was growing up, my mother-in-law rented out rooms in their home on North Chesterman as a bed and breakfast to help cover their property taxes, while also working full-time at the Commonwealth. The idea of generating income by offering tourist accommodation in a home is nothing new. Tofino was granted resort municipality status for a reason. I believe there are more effective ways to enforce these regulations at a local level, and I feel it was short-sighted for council to opt in without considering better strategies and unintended consequences. If you truly have the best interests of the community, I respectfully ask the council to reconsider its position and opt out of the principal residence requirement of Bill 35. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Mentions don't allow comments from gallery. I also don't allow clapping or booing or anything like that. I'm gonna run it tight to the schedule, tight to the bylaws. Up next, we have Mr. Burton. Mr. Burton.
All right, Jason Burton, Beck Island, agenda item 10.1. I believe the decision to opt in was meant to address affordability issues for the middle class. Our community is unique, and the bill will cause too much collateral damage to that very demographic. There are very few paths to home ownership, all with hard work and financial risk. Short-term rentals have helped make it possible for many. Life savings going into buying real estate, most homeowners I know today are carrying a debt to equity ratio that is on the edge of unsustainable. We need these creative solutions. Owning a single family home has never been a simple or easy thing to do here. I just don't want to see community members get hurt. We should be figuring out how to protect the hardworking locals. We can't gamble with the future of our friends and neighbors. And I think as a community, we can come up with a far better solution. The initial shock of this bill will be catastrophic to anyone who's entered the market in the last 10 years and rely on short-term rental income. We know that a huge portion of these second homeowners are community members. I don't want to see my friends and neighbors who have worked so hard for what they have, losing sleep over uncertain economic future in this town. Let's take the time to identify and protect the people that are going to be hurt by this. As a business owner, I can only say there's a lot of negative outcomes for Tla-o-qui-aht, our business. I'm just asking, please opt out. It's too much too fast. We might be able to weather a 6-month storm, but let's not take a chance on the next year and a half. Can I get back the rest of my seconds?
We have Mr. Sadler.
I'm Andrew Sadler, 1110 Fellowship Drive, speaking to 10.1. Born and raised in Tofino, I am married, intend to raise a family here, and desire to remain in this community. I live in a long-term tenant situation where I have relied on below-market rent subsidized by my landlord's STR. This has allowed me to grow my business and income in order to save for the future purchase of my own home. Now, with these restrictions, tenants will no longer reap these benefits. Some homeowners will consider leaving homes empty, putting up their properties for sale, and making tenant spaces their primary residence. therefore evicting tenants. This furthers the vulnerability of tenants who once had secure below market housing with no strings attached. My situation is currently uncertain. If I have to find another place to live, I only see the following housing situations available: staff accommodation, which is not family suitable, income restricted government housing, for which I didn't even qualify, $3,000 a month condominiums, which there goes my savings, and trailer living. None of these options allow for a young person to feasibly grow financially, own a home, start a family, and thrive. My current form of housing could be considered the most sustainable for generational growth. My situation is not unique. In my immediate circle of coworkers, 3 of us face the same crisis. It's difficult to estimate the total number, but please consider that there are likely several of us impacted tenants working at every business across town, creating a compounding toll to our community. Please consider opting out. Landlords and tenants can find solutions for the next 6 months if necessary, but 2 to 3 years of this will break the best form of rental housing available in Tofino. Thank you.
We have Ms. Dare, Emery Adair.
My name is Amrita Adair. I live at 902 Tree Frog Lane, and I'm referencing agenda item 0.1. Dear Mayor and Council, I have long admired Council's ability to be leaders in municipal policy, crafting thoughtful ideas with staff, stakeholders, and community members. We are a unique community with unique needs, and our work together needs to reflect this. You, our elected officials, alongside your staff and passionate community members, have an ideal opportunity to bring a nuanced approach to SDR regulations that takes the best of provincial policy and marries it with the innovative ideas that Tofino is known for. Reading all the letters submitted for today's agenda alongside last year's staff reports, I believe there are good ideas here in Tofino worth pursuing, reinforcing the need for a locally crafted solution. What I find deeply troubling about this current situation is the level of divisiveness between the community and our council. I have seen hasty decision-making, rigid thinking, and confusion. It is tricky to be right. Being right narrows your worldview and causes you to dig in your heels. I gently urge us to consider the example of democracy that we are setting with the lack of due process, not giving weight to the community feedback, and using our fullest potential. Council, you have an incredible opportunity in front of you. Please opt out of Bill 35. Bill 35 is the equivalent of a bottom trawler. Yes, you will catch what you are looking for, but there will be irreparable damage to your ecosystem. Build something better. Use your community, your stakeholders, your small business owners, and your staff to create the best policy for our community, a legacy that we all can be proud of, and once again set the precedent for innovation and creativity.
You. Over 10 minutes. Moving on to delegations, we have 2. 8.1, we have the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network regarding Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network annual update. Let's do it.
Thank you. Thanks, Mayor and Council. Nice to see everyone here tonight. I've done a really good job this last round. I've been getting on each one of the spicier agenda items. Everyone's going to know about the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network. If you don't know me, I'm Marcy DeWitt. I am the coordinator for the Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network. I have been in this role for about 10 years now. And I'm a resident of Ucluelet. So I'm going to try to get through there later before you get into the rest of this tonight. The Alberni-Clayoquot Health Network is a multidisciplinary network that receives funding from Island Health in order to pull together community members from across the Alberni-Clayoquot. So that's 3 municipalities, 6 electoral areas, and the 10 Neutronal nations to look at what our health priorities are. And we've been doing this roughly since about 2011. We started getting serious about it in 2012 and then really kind of got our motion, got our feet under us in 2015. So for the past 10 years, we've been working on a very good model, collaboration, planning, and project implementation to look at building healthy communities in the Alberni-Clayoquot region. So our task is to look at the social and structural determinants of health. So we're not actually looking at health systems and direct health programming, but everything, some of which you're going to be speaking about tonight, that pulls together to build your communities and create healthy, prosperous communities for everyone to thrive in. So we are often working very closely with our local and municipal leaders, looking at those intersections between politics and health, decisions, and the social determinants of health. And as I mentioned, our aim is to really champion building healthy communities. So our structure, how do we do this? We have one coordinator, I'm part-time. And through our funding with Island Health, that's hosted through the regional district, we have a variety of different mechanisms. So we kind of try to flatten those out on our little sphere here. We're constantly doing community engagement. So looking into the community, finding out what is important to community members, either through data or direct community engagement. Going into networks that are, already in existence, ensuring that we have good connection with folks that are doing the work around health, social development, and other networks. We pulled together action tables around any of the priorities that have been deemed as high priority for our network and for the social determinants of health in our region. A great example of that I'll be speaking to further is the West Coast Transportation Action Table that's done a lot of work for this region. And then we also have our table of partners. So those are folks that come together and help lead me, let me know what's going on in the communities, sit and help me make decisions and really lead that work. So as you can see here, our table of partners, 2025 representation is listed, but that changes quite regularly. We do typically have most municipalities, local governments, and a lot of the local nonprofits present. I just wanted to highlight a couple of the kind of predominant areas that we've seen progress. I do aim to do a presentation to council every year, but 2023 was very, very busy, and as was 2024. So I think the last time I was here was winter 2023. So since that time, we've had a lot of great successes, and this is really through the targeted work of bringing folks together to speak to local priorities, doing the project management, facilitation and collaboration kind of components, and yeah, just ensuring that we're leveraging resources for the project implementation. So some of the highlights from the last couple of years, kind of mentioned network development. So just our ability to pull people together to work consistently throughout the region. This is one of our longstanding priorities, ensuring that we're building trust and a collaborative environment for folks to work well together, despite what kinds of issues that we're talking about around the table. So ongoing work there. But I think a little bit more, we've been working a lot around poverty reduction. So this has been something that we've been working on since 2016. In 2022, we presented to you our poverty reduction action plan. And since that time, we've seen some great success. So we've been successful in leveraging $40,000 and match that with some additional funding. We were able to pull together a equity building toolkit to local communities in looking at equity, and we'll be presenting that out in the next coming months. But that is live on our website now with data and all sorts of resources for local leadership and community members to check out. We also sponsored and assisted in implementing the Decolonize First workshops to get local leaders and community members on the same page and doing some interpersonal and introspection learning. As well, poverty reduction throughout our whole report. There is a couple key themes. One was access to services, access to employment, education, all those good things, as well as ensuring that youth and young people have the ability to live in our communities. So transportation and access to services is one of the big areas that we have been working on, and no surprise, it made it into our poverty reduction report, but we've also been working on this since 2014. Many of us know that the West Coast Transportation Working Group was a big part of getting BC Transit to the coast. First in assisting with getting the interim service going, and then keeping BC Transit at the table, keeping all of our partners at the table, and championing that for our region. And that was very much ensuring that not just Tofino and Ucluelet, but also Itatsu and Tyas had access to that service. Outside of that great success, we have also been successful in ensuring that medical transportation is available. So I don't even know what year, we had a 2022, I believe, maybe 2020. We had a stick of dynamite thrown in our transportation services. And our medical access was also greatly diminished. But we were able to work with Island Health Contracts to ensure that not only were our services reinstated, but our communities are now incorporated into those contracts again, which they were never in the past. So if you don't know about it, there is a non-emergency medical transportation system. Ask your doctor, they know about it. There's posters around. And that's one of the other pieces that we were working on pretty hard 2023 and 2024. Our Communities Building Youth Futures initiative, what kept us quite busy last year. We were able to leverage over $700,000 over 2 years to assist in building capacity with youth in the region. We hired youth facilitators in the West Coast communities, Barkley communities, and Alberni communities, and sadly had to kind of close up that program, but have been able to continue funding the youth safe spaces that youth said that they wanted. So we've been able to continue ensuring that funding is provided to safe spaces that were developed throughout that project. And then moving forward, our 2024 strategic plan, we've very much simplified our work, recognizing that we need to continue building safe spaces to have good conversations about our community health. So looking at network development, but also looking at communications and outreach. How do we get information into our communities better, and how do we get information back out? So we'll be working on that a little bit more acutely. And then focusing in on poverty reduction, because all of the work that we've done to date has really focused around poverty reduction and ensuring that not just those in most need, but those throughout our community have access to services that they require. And so on the horizon, we're very much looking forward to coming around and presenting the Building Equity Toolkit presentation to various different leadership groups. We'll be maintaining facilitation support of a number of different coalitions in the region, and doing a little bit of a mirroring of projects. So we'll be doing the Port Alberni Living Wage Project and calculation so that we have that data throughout the region, but then also reaching out to your community to find out what kinds of data points are useful as we go through on planning our poverty reduction plan updates. Thank you.
Okay, let's great. Work and very through. Questions, Ms. DeWitt, Council? Yeah.
I had a question regarding your youth program that went through its lifespan. Are there plans to renew it or seek other engagement?
We have been able to fund it $30,000 this year and $10,000 from for this coming year from our own funds. but very much looking into communities with the smart lifting capacity. So many of our partner organizations have put forward some plans to try to keep the youth safe spaces going. And I know the one in Tla-o-qui-aht is maintained, but I'm not sure of the status at this point actually of the Tofino youth safe space.
Councillor McMaster, then Councillor Steer.
On that list of all the organisations that help you, so the district. I didn't see the district of Tofino. Do we not help you?
No, they're not on there.
No help you?
Not at this point.
Well, more comment now. I think some of the questions around the youth support services and youth capacity. I've had the good fortune, I'm the appointed director on the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District. So I've had the opportunity over the last 5 years to work very closely with Marcy and the great work she does. I do want to throw a shout out. She's also very actively involved in our Ground SAR, the WeSAR program here on the West Coast. One of the issues that has been brought up is that youth capacity building and some of the issues that come there. And maybe just quickly speak to why Tofino is not on there. And we have been a community partner in the past, and former councillor Thick was our representative there. We just haven't had that appointment process come forward again. So it is still a possibility for us to be on there. We're just not there now. So
It's probably me that shut it down.
it's probably you, yeah. And I did want, and I just also wanted to shout out to the work that had been done historically, not just on transit, was a critical component in bringing that service to the West Coast through the ACRD. But also the healthcare work that had been done historically as well. And I didn't see it noted there, but there was a lot of work historically in that capacity. Yes, it was with another hat, but certainly closely related in that field. So thank you for your service and appreciate coming out and giving that information to council.
And I know we mentioned it before, and I know Councillor Steer mentioned it, but Marcy's been a prime driver in our transit system. So thank you. Okay, thank you.
We're going to move on to 8.2 Long Beach Chamber of Commerce regarding
So yeah, update to the speakers was also with Brad Purcell from Tourism Tofino, and we're here on behalf of our organizations asking you to opt out of the principal residence requirement. It's actually not working. Tofino needs a solution that fits our reality, not a one-size-fits-all approach. Housing is a priority and it must be addressed in a way that works for our community. Our small business owners, volunteers, engaged residents are the backbone of Tofino, and the new registry places yet another burden on them after 5 years of challenges. Unlike these past hardships, this is something council can take leadership on for our community overall well-being. The concerns have been clear in this very short timeline of engagement that has been extensive, and there's a very real and detrimental impact from this registry. Imagine what we could accomplish with a well-planned and thought-out engagement process. We're formally requesting that the District of Tofino conduct an economic impact assessment to understand how this legislation affects local employment, business sustainability, housing affordability, and community well-being. And we ask council to opt out and work with us on a Tofino-driven solution. I'm going to invite you to watch this video. We had almost 50 submissions in just 48 hours and wanted to capture and share more voices from around the community. For those online, when we tested it, the sound doesn't work, but it's public on our YouTube channel. So please go to that on YouTube.
Back. You have to shut her off. 10 minutes. Thanks. Who's got it?
I don't have control.
Okay. Thanks. That's a 10-minute limit for allegations. List of correspondence. The council's read them all.
I have a question. I removed myself, in consideration of letters that came forward on short-term rentals during the last meeting. And my question, if any staff member knows, if these are new letters that came in since that time, or if the list is been added on to.
Through the mayor, actually the chair, yes, these are all new letters since the last meeting. Additional letters have also been circulated to council. So as we receive them in after the cutoff date, those have been circulated by email up to as late as this afternoon.
Not necessarily new people. Letters. Okay, we've got 9.2. We've got a petition submitted by BC Renco regarding short-term rental legislation. The council. We also have Long Beach, Tofino Long Beach Chamber of Commerce regarding Bill 5. Station. And over, Councilor Steer.
Yeah, I just in the letter from the chamber, there was a request in there. I was trying to find it in my notes regarding sorry, I apologize.
Economic assessment.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and I'm wondering if we might address the request through that letter of correspondence. If that
We can discuss it if you like. I mean, we're going to be starting a zoning review and rewrite.
So that may be an opportunity.
That's a great opportunity to look at in that process.
Yeah. Yeah, that was the economic impact assessment on the effects of Bill 35 principle. And we are in the process, so that might be an opportune time for that to be addressed. And maybe through the chair, if I would look to staff with that through that zoning bylaw review, would that be an opportunity within that context to look at that type of economic impact, or is that something outside of the scope of that?
Through the chair to Councillor Steer, the last report from council during the Q3 presentation in 2024, we had indicated that the zoning review process was on hold with staffing resources. We haven't presented a new framework or timeline to council as of today. So it's if council would like to consider an economic impact assessment or in zoning, that would be related to all land use discussions. And it would come, throughout that process. And I'm not sure when that is. If I understand the letter correctly, this is a request to do an economic impact assessment related to Bill 35. Certainly that could form part, if that is part of the discussions, but at this time the request is.
Just a comment on that, I think when we did discuss the zoning review rewrite process, I believe short-term rentals were to be dealt with. Beginning of the process, that can include assessment of short-term rentals as well.
If I may, the last timeline that we presented to council, we were not going to entirely front on the short-term rentals. We were going to move through a process where we dealt with some, smaller items, land use items that we can get used to discussing the rezoning bylaw on that.
Thank you. Further comments from council? We have 9.4 J Gildan Heist regarding temporary use permits. Let's see that presentation. Presentations and reports.
which we're moving on to right now. 10.1, we have a presentation on the principal residence requirements and we have a verbal.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Tla-o-qui-aht. I'm the Chief Administrative Officer. Presenting this evening will be Q&amp, our bylaw supervisor and planner one. Kira has extensive experience and knowledge in overseeing the regulation since it's been released, which was in late January. This report has been prepared in response to the resolution made by Council at the last meeting on February 25th. Where staff was directed to prepare a report to clarify the principal residence requirement under Bill 35 and report back to Council this evening. So we'd like to preface this presentation with the understanding that we are discussing Province of BC Acts, regulations, and supporting information. If there is a conflict between the information presented and the provincial legislation or regulations, the provincial legislation and regulations will prevail. These slides will be released to the public following the presentation. Presentation is estimated to be about 10 minutes. Ms. Tack will be available for questions and stand up here during the question and answer period. I will also be available. I'll be sitting over there. Once questions are finished, I'll just ask that Kira be asked to sit down. During council discussion, we'll remain available for any questions of clarity and time.
Through the chair, I'd like to thank the CAO for the introduction. We're going to move into some background. So October 26, 2023, Bill 35, the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act, was passed in the British Columbia Provincial Parliament. Bill 35 introduced the principal residence requirement, provided exemptions and provisions for exempt local governments to opt in to the principal residence requirement. The Act has since remained unchanged, with the finer details being introduced by the Associated Short-Term Rental Accommodations Regulation. Throughout this presentation, I am going to refer to both the Act and the regulation. The Act is the parent legislation. The regulation is where the finer details come from. At the March 12th, 2024 regular council meeting, District of Tofino Council voted to opt in to the principal residence requirement. On May 1st, 2024, the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act and Regulation both came into effect throughout the province of British Columbia, including the removal of legal non-conforming use of property protections for short-term rentals throughout the province. The province also announced the establishment of the Compliance and Enforcement Unit within the short-term rental branch in the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs. On November 1st, 2024, the principal residence requirement came into effect for the District of Tofino and other local governments that opted in before March 31st, 2024. On January 20th, 2025, the province of British Columbia launched the registry for short-term rental hosts, platforms, and strata hotel platforms in BC, along with supplemental information, including amendments to the short-term rental accommodations regulation. The January 20th, 2025 amendments include, but are not limited to, adding the prescribed short-term rental information, including supplier host's date of birth and the property host social insurance number, terms and conditions of registration for short-term rental offers, the details of the principal residence declaration and required documents, and outlining contraventions and amounts for administrative penalties. I'd like to share two key definitions from Bill 35, the Short-Term Rental Accommodation Act, as adopted in October 2023. Please pay specific attention to the definition of property host, as this will be used throughout the presentation. Property host means a person who is legally entitled to possession of a property where short-term rental accommodation services are provided and has responsibility for arranging the short-term rental offer.
The second key definition is supplier host. The property host is considered a supplier host in addition to the other persons defined. All property hosts are supplier hosts, but not all supplier hosts are property hosts. The province has stated that a property manager is defined as a supplier host. A non-resident property owner may register as a property manager if they are managing the short-term rental offer on behalf of the property host. Where the term applicant and registrant are used in the Act, it means the supplier hosts for that short-term rental offer. The term co-host is used on the province's webpage. However, it is not used or defined in the Act or regulations. The short-term rental branch has stated that a co-host's information can be included in the application, but the application must be completed by either the property or supplier host. The principal residence requirement applies to all short-term rentals within the District of Tofino. In effect, the only person who may apply and register as the property host for a short-term rental offer is a person who lives on the same legal parcel for a longer period of time in a year than any other place and has sufficient documentation to complete a principal residence declaration as outlined in Section 5.1 of the regulation. Section 5.1 is new as of January 20th, 2025. A property host may offer for short-term rental their own personal residence, and provided they are legally entitled to possession of the property, not more than one secondary suite or accessory dwelling unit on the same legal parcel. Where a tenant chooses to apply to the registry as the property host, they are required to submit a tenancy agreement as defined in Section 1 of the Residential Tenancy Act between the property host and the landlord. This tenancy agreement should show that the tenant is legally entitled to the possession of the dwelling being offered for short-term rental. In this scenario, a landlord who is acting on behalf of, under the direction of, or as an agent of the property host may register as the property manager. The Housing and Land Use Policy Division of the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs recommends that both owners and tenants should seek their own legal advice as to how the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act and regulation, as well as the Residential Tenancy Act, would apply to their particular situation. These details are from the provincial website. By May 1st, 2025, short-term rental hosts must have registered each of their short-term rentals with the Provincial Short-Term Rental Registry to operate in BC. From May 1st to 31st, platforms must stop advertising any short-term rentals that do not have a valid registration number and prevent any new bookings. Beginning June 1st, 2025, and going forward, platforms must stop advertising any short-term rentals that do not have a valid registration number, prevent any new bookings, and cancel any existing bookings. Only a property host or other supplier host, such as the property manager, can apply to the registry. A co-host's information can be included in the application, but the application must be completed by either the property host or other supplier host. All registrations must be renewed annually, and hosts must resubmit proof of principal residence every 3 years. Section 4.5 of the regulation, new January 20th, 2025, specifies that the registration becomes invalid and a new registration is required if the offer has a new property host. Many have noted that the provincial registry is asking for the property host's social insurance number and documents to support their principal residence declaration as a condition of registration. This was added as part of the January 20th, 2025 amendments to the regulation. Section 33, subsection 2B of the Act outlines the purposes for which the information collected may be disclosed. This does include, but is not limited to the administration or enforcement of the Homeowner Grant Act or the Land Tax Deferment Act, tax or duty legislation from either Canadian federal or BC provincial governments, and local short-term rental bylaws. However, the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act does not require the property host to manage the listing and collect the income, as a supplier host can do this as well. The Act defines a supplier host who is not the property host as a person who, acting on behalf of, under the direction of, or as an agent of the property host, has responsibility for arranging the short-term rental offer, which may include managing the short-term rental accommodation services. Again, I would like to remind council that registrant includes supplier host, which includes property host and property manager, if applicable. In short, the property host and any other supplier host are equally responsible to follow the rules for short-term rental offers at a provincial and local level, and to report any change in prescribed information, such as the cancellation or suspension of a business license, or whether the property provided by the offer is the principal residence of the property host, within 14 calendar days. These responsibilities are laid out in Section 9 of the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act and Sections 4.4 and 4.5 of the regulation. Parts 4 of both the Act and regulation outline compliance and enforcement. The table in Schedule 4 of the regulation lays out administrative penalties, otherwise known as fines, for first, second, and third offenses that may be issued to either a platform service provider, supplier host, registrant, or simply person. It is important to note that Section 17 of the regulation provides the opportunity to be heard in the case of a contravention. And Section 20 lays out 6 required considerations before an administrative penalty may be issued. The province has established the Compliance and Enforcement Unit within the short-term rental branch in the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs. Their role is to enforce compliance with the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act and regulation. Local governments, such as Tofino, remain responsible for enforcing their own bylaws related to short-term rentals. We understand that this is a lot of information to digest and attempt to summarize. This information may be subject to change, including due to the legislative process. If there is a conflict between the information presented and the provincial legislation or regulations, the provincial legislation and regulations prevail. These slides will be released to the public following the presentation. We have a recommendation for council to receive this report for information. Both the CAO and myself are available for council's questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Questions from council? I've got a couple, but maybe we'll scoop down the table if somebody has questions. Any questions? Councillor Anderson.
Yeah, one of the things that when we voted to opt in, I was under the impression that the provincial regulations might help in some way, assist with Tofino's enforcement of short-term rentals, and even I don't know staff can answer this question, but I'm wondering if there's any sort of does it make it easier to enforce our rules? So by opting in.
Stat, can you answer that? I think the question is from a bylaw, and maybe I can read.
From an
enforcement point of view, your experience with enforcing rental stuff, maybe
does the registry
give them some insight.
So through the chair, I'll do my best to answer that question. There are certain provisions under under Bill 35 that do assist in local government bylaw and enforcement. One of those pieces is, as I discussed, the responsibilities of the registrant are also to comply with local government bylaws. There's also the requirement that a registrant, if they are in a jurisdiction that requires business licensing for short-term rentals, there's the requirement that they have a business license in good standing. If their business license is suspended or canceled and that information is shared with the registry, then that registration would be considered invalid and could be taken down. So it certainly does facilitate enforcement of local government bylaws.
Thanks. And maybe I'll just tag on to that just to get a better idea. Because this is really, we're talking about the principal residence requirement. We have a principal residence requirement, to be somebody's principal residence, and this adds a layer to that. So that principal residence requirement would then be enforced by the province, as opposed to if we did not opt in, we would be responsible for enforcing principal.
So to the chair, we remain responsible for enforcing District of Tofino bylaws. We still have to review business licenses for compliance with our bylaws. And if there is a contravention of our bylaws, we first have to go through our own process to inform the individual of a contravention before escalating to offense. I can't remember what the bit was.
All right, I'm going to keep going down the table. If anybody else has questions, I've got a couple. Just maybe for some clarity. Now, I know you mentioned it, but I know it had come up, and I was quite interested in it as well. Is the idea that the host, principal resident host, had to declare income, and that was an emphatic no. Is that right?
Yeah, through the chair, I actually got some additional clarification from the province today, from the housing and something policy branch. And that is where I got the wording. The Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act does not require the property host to manage the listing and collect the income. The province does stress that both tenants and landlords who may be involved in one of these situations absolutely should seek independent legal advice, because there are so many variations of what these situations can entail. But the province has been quite clear that it is not an absolute requirement that the property host must collect the income.
Councilor Sloman.
Follow up to the chair. But that could change.
Through the chair, I can't necessarily speculate as to whether or not the province may change their legislation.
Okay, Councilor Steer. And just to follow up then as well on that particular note, and it was in the slideshow, maybe some clarity. What was the purpose then of providing the social insurance number for the registry?
Through the chair, the province has not made that clear.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? And then maybe just a couple more questions from me. Nobody's jumping up to ask questions. I feel like I should ask questions. So just to be clear, the principal resident can be the owner, and then the supplier host can be the manager, running the short-term rentals and doing all of the administrative. And that is correct. As well, and then so the host can be either an owner or a tenant. And then the supplier host for either case can do actually all of the running of the short-term rental administration.
So through the chair, to clarify, in a place where the principal residence requirement applies, the property host can be any person who is legally entitled to possession of the property or dwelling that is being offered for short-term rental. They must meet the principal residence requirement. And then another person who is not a resident could register as the property manager, and that is a supplier host. And that person could manage the entirety of the bookings and details, and the province has stated that that person can collect the income.
And I know the co-host, I know it's a little bit weird, but there's no clarity on, if people have, maybe it's another question for you since you're on the inside, not necessarily in the slide, in the slide deck, but people have been, are you aware of people, maybe this is outside your knowledge, but people have been registering as co-hosts and supplier hosts?
I feel confident that the director of the Tofino Long Beach Chamber of Commerce is comfortable with me sharing this information, that she did pass along to me that there are people who did register as a co-host. I can't remember the arrangement of, but they tried to register as the co-host in some sort of roundabout way where they didn't have to include the property host social insurance number, and those registrations initially got through and then have been reviewed and declined, is my understanding.
Because there was an issue with the host.
Because although the province has not been clear and has not been entirely clear about what a co-host is exactly, they have been clear that the co-host cannot be the person to submit the registration. It must be one of the supplier hosts, which is either the property host or the other supplier host, which is commonly called the property manager.
Okay, thanks for that. Ms. Etienne?
What may help is if, Kira, you could reread the note that you have on slide 6, from however, just related to this particular point, just reread it again, I think, for council's benefit.
Yeah, so, and this is just comes below where I describe the section of the act that outlines the purposes for which the information collected can be disclosed. However, the Short-Term Rental Accommodations Act does not require the property host to manage the listing and collect the income, as a supplier host can do this as well. The Act defines a supplier host who is not the property host as a person who, acting on behalf of, under the direction of, or as an agent of the property host, has responsibility for arranging the short-term rental offer, which may include managing the short-term rental accommodation services.
Thank you.
If I just want to add further to that, a social insurance number is still required. And would that be the, maybe clarify?
So yeah, I just want to, sorry to interrupt. I just want to read directly from the regulation itself. So in section 4.5 of the regulation, I lied. It's not that one. So the social insurance number part is actually section 2 of the regulation. That sets out the prescribed short-term rental information, which is used within the Act. So this just adds a definition to the term short-term rental information that is used in the Act. And this is the information that must be provided as a condition of registration. And that includes, in the case of a property host or supplier host that is an individual, the individual's date of birth, and the point of interest being the property host's social insurance number, or if the property host does not have a social insurance number, the applicable of the following, and it outlines 3 different options for an individual tax number if a person does not have a social insurance number. And this information is required to be submitted by the property host.
Oh, Councillor Sloman, question?
Yes, question through the chair. The property manager, would they need to have specific qualifications?
So through the chair, there are no specific qualifications outlined. The property manager would only have to fit the following definition of supplier host, which is a definition in the Act. And a supplier host in respect of a short-term rental offer means A, the property host, and B, the following persons, if applicable. Subsection I, a person who, acting on behalf of, under the direction of, or as an agent of the property host, has the responsibility for arranging for the short-term rental offer, which may include managing the short-term rental accommodation services.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from staff before we let her sit down? Okay, we're gonna let you up. Okay. We might call you back, or we might get feedback from. Sure. Okay. Let's look to council. Yeah, there's also obliged to have any discussion at all, but I'm going to open it up to council for any comments. And I just wanted to make a note. I know in some of the presentations that there was the idea that maybe opting into Bill 35. The only option that Tofino has or had was to opt into principal residence requirement. The entirety of the bill otherwise applies to all short-term rentals for the province. So just to make that clear. Councilor Master.
I'll go last on stick today.
Councilor Sloman.
Yeah, I just feel with the timing of this information, I just with the discomfort and stress that are many of the tenants and property owners are facing, I just feel it would still be a good idea to opt out by March 31st.
And just to clarify, this would opting out would not take effect in November of this year. All right, well, I'm looking to council. We can go down the line if you want to. Sure.
Actually, no, I want to hear everyone else speak first.
Okay. Look over here. Who else wants to speak?
You want to go first?
I can certainly go first as well. If through the chair, and if I could just for 1 second before I address the I did want to bring up so I will call the elephant in the room in some sense, and I want to thank Mr. Koreski for coming forward today. There has been many cases I will say, for many of those other voices in the room, and I want to thank Mr. Kresge in the sense that he came in a very civilized, in a very articulate, to express through his letters and conversations his views on this, and this is an example of the decorum and the civility that I think is important for our community to remember. There are a number of voices that we haven't heard from in the community, and through direct conversations with me, I can speak to the fact that there was a sense of intimidation, of bullying, and in some cases, and I had seen those outright threats. We know that's not acceptable, and I know 99.9% of the people in this room agree with that. And I'm not talking to the 99.9%, but I do think it's important for the 99.9% to allow for the safe space for those people to express those views. It is critically important for those views to be heard by the community. And I think I think it's the responsibility, not just of council, but of the community to allow for the safe expression of those views. I'll leave it there, and then I'll address the points that Councillor Sloman has brought up. And there, once again, there are legitimate points on both sides of the equation here. I think what the information that we have received today in terms of the registry is, and I will admit it's complex. It is difficult, you know, and I've had the opportunity to go over this in detail, and I, you know, I will admit, if I was the one that had to do this, it is a complex equation. And on top of that, the time frame of January 20th, when this first came out, and I know a number of people who have tried to be compliant with the registry and have failed in those attempts, and others have been may have been successful. But it does pose a very short period of time for those people to come into compliance for what could be, for many, part of their economic security for the upcoming fiscal year. And so I would support Councillor Sloman's request at this point in time, keeping in mind that we will have an opportunity once more definitive information is brought forward and the community has the ability, those that are involved in the process, to be able to have a much more lengthy time frame to come into those compliances. We have the ability at any time well, at any time we have a time frame where we can and cannot, but by March 31st of 2026, we also have the ability, once again, if we choose to opt out now, to have the conversation of opting in when we have enough information available to us. So I'll leave it there and allow other members of council to have their opinions heard.
Anything else?
Councillor Anderson?
And I have an awful lot of thoughts on this, but it might take me a couple of votes to bring them all forward and to recall them all. Because I didn't prepare notes, so maybe I should have, especially after seeing so many well-prepared presentations today. I supported council's decision to opt in about a year ago, and it was largely based on my feeling that it would assist the district with enforcement, and that would better protect tenants and have greater insurance that operators were complying with our own bylaws, which have that requirement. So I felt like it would assist with our enforcement, and it would also, in the simplest terms, help provide housing and protect tenants better by having the residency requirement supported further by the province. Now that more details have come forward, I don't feel like that is necessarily the case. The requirements are challenging for any tenant. And we've heard through letters and presentations that there's a lot of concern in our community. And also, this is from a wide swath of our community. It's not only from operators, it's from business owners, it's from residents of all sorts who don't simply derive their income from short-term rentals, but have maybe derive some benefit from them being there. And I'm not sure if that's been fully considered by council and fully assessed. It seems like much of the council support to opt in has come along with the notion that this might change conditions in the market and bring house prices down. And that is not clear and that it will. Tofino faces a number of forces that keep the market prices high, including the ability to develop or with abundance a pool of housing. Our own housing assessment documents and studies we've done have shown that we need housing at all kinds of levels, assisted housing all the way to family housing. Anyways, I would support a decision to opt out, and I particularly interested to explore, maybe hear more about the Chamber's proposal to do some work on this, to really get some assessments on those things that council might use in their decision making, rather than sort of emotionally or maybe from cursory studies or searches on the internet, what they might come up with on their own. And it could involve more of our community than simply council or staff or hiring studies. It might take on that kind of process. I think that would go a long ways to coming up with a Tofino solution that might repair some of what is perceived as damage, I guess, polarization around the topic. And that does concern me as well, that kind of divide in the community. I've seen the community come together around many things in the past, and I think council could be not only in coming up with a solution that was widely supported in the community, but also leaders that could bring their community together in examining this issue and trying to address all of the concerns. So those are my preliminary remarks. So I'll leave it at that.
Councillor,
I think Councillor Steer addressed one of the things that I wanted to speak to, but probably more eloquently, which was that there have been some pretty serious intimidation tactics and bullying that have taken place, which I think is quite horrific. And we've seen it in letters we've received. I've spoken to friends, family. It's been highly inappropriate and has made things very difficult from our seats as well, because I know that I have personally requested loved ones to not speak up and to not write letters, because I don't want them to have any more of a target on them than the people that have already spoken up. People that have written in last year about this issue have been addressed, and I think that was inappropriate. I think there's been a lot of confusion about the letters that have asked us, that have written in. There seems to be this understanding that we have this option of opting in. We are opted in for the summer. When people are coming up and they're saying, oh, we need to opt out because we're going to lose our bookings for the summer. Those bookings for the summer are gone if you do not, if the property is not compliant. That is already the case. I think talking about timing to say, oh, it's not enough time to figure it out. People do have to figure it out. The time is now. And if we opt out and then people figure it out and then don't figure it out and then potentially have to, that's providing no consistency. And I think, yes, the global economy is scary and things are a little bit wild out there, but we can at least provide some consistency here by saying, this is a decision we made, this is a decision we stand by. It has to be figured out by May 1st. You will have figured it out. You will get through this and be able to adapt. I have concerns about enforcement. I go on Airbnb and within the first 3 pages, you can find 23 hosts that have 2 to 3 to 4 listings. You see people that are listing 3 listings using the same registration number. It's kind of the Wild West out there. And I know that Tofino itself doesn't have such a strong pull with Airbnb. You know, we think we're strong, we're mighty, but we're little guys in the global scheme of things, especially to an $83 billion company who is now bullying us to continue to line their pocketbooks. I feel strongly in support of the decision that we made last March, and I'll continue to stand by it.
Well, most of you know, I've always been in favor of one property owner, one host, one house. I've been stuck with that all the time. And when the bill C-35 came out, I was disappointed that they extended the rights to the tenant there, but it still was better than nothing. So that's why I supported Bill 35. And I think we voted on this twice already. We have to stay the course. I'm tired of the intimidation, like people mentioned, that people are getting, and that people in this town are scared to speak up. They've, when I first got on council, I was reprimanded for referring to Tofino as a tourist town. I was told that we were a town that welcomed tourists. I've just learned recently that we're a tourism town with nuances. And the implication is that there's been no studies on tourist towns. I would say people haven't actually looked at the studies that have been done on tourist towns. There's been lots of studies written on small towns in Devon and Cornwall, in the States, that's really affected them. It's driven up rental prices, driven up house prices, affected the economy. Studies have shown that one house removed from the pool to become a short-term rental is more detrimental to the economy than that one starting as a short-term rental. So I'm going to stick to my guns. Further,
Sorry.
All right, thank you. Yeah, it is always interesting to hear more information on things. I come to this table mostly as a representative of tenants in town, of the people who are in the caretaker positions. I have spoken to a lot of people who are strongly against signing leases with their tenants. And I've also spoken to tenants who registered for this no problem, and they have very good relationships with their landlords. They're very happy to stay where they're at. And I think a really important part of the conversation here that I would like to add to is I'd love to do away with this rhetoric of bad landlords and bad tenants. I think that there's lots of individual situations. And just like everyone likes to say that Tofino is an individual town, I'd like you to remember that almost everyone in this room, even if they own 3 houses, used to be a tenant at some point, and we weren't all a bunch of crazy people. So I just want to put that out there. That being said, though, I do hear people's desire for public engagement. As we heard in one of the delegations, there were many people who came together on 4 days' notice, were able to give their opinion. I would like to see how many more people we could hear from in more than 4 days. And speaking to Councillor Thomas's point, I would like to see consistency. And as Councillor Steer said, a very quick, polite discussion would be wonderful. So I do have a motion prepared. If you're willing to hear it, or if you want, I can wait till later.
Let's should I say my piece first? I'm just one of 7, so
Sure.
the that and then well, I mean, I've spoken a lot and everybody's heard me speak and stood by council, and I do stand by council's decision to opt in. I think we always knew that the host was a possibility, didn't have to be the owner. Still a possibility. Some people are finding it uncomfortable. Some people find it difficult, but it's not impossible. Some people have done it. Some people are very happy doing it. And despite everybody's opinions, I think that, and it's a difficult decision. I think it's already been bearing fruit. To be honest, I will continue to. It's not going to be easy. I don't think any decision council makes now about short-term rentals is going to be easy. Every decision we make about short-term rentals is going to be hard. That is what we've inherited. That's a question for another day of why we got here. When I look at this principal residency requirement, I look at Q-amp, also a very close small town with lots of tourism. It's a tourism economy just like ours. It's a resort community. And we talk about zoning, dealing with this particular thing in zoning. Like, let's deal with the zoning. They did that. They require a principal resident that is the administrator, provable by multiple identifications, CRA information, etc. That's what they have there. They also require, they say, hey, look, principal purpose of a house is a residence. And then you clue it for vacation rentals and bed and breakfast. Not only does the host have to be the administrator, they have to occupy the largest part of the house. So only 35% can be used as a vacation rental, or 35% can be used as bed and breakfast. There's strict restrictions. And the idea is that houses are primarily for living in. And the problem in Tofino is that's not the case. Investment homes, we've seen over and over by the hundreds, 100, 150 anyway, are primarily to make money. And that is the epitome of the financialization and commercialization of housing. That's what it is. That's what it is. So if people live in their home, they can run a short-term rental. This is totally fine. It works for them. If they own a second home, they can still run a short-term rental in the largest part of the house. But the tenant has to have to be the host, provable to the province. So I see those things as reasonable. I know that people don't, and I've heard them. I have heard many people reach out to me personally, by letters, by texts, phone calls, personally, and saying that they very much support council's position, but they are too afraid to speak out. And I think that is something that we have to address. And I'm actually, in some cases, glad that the council chose to opt in and take this opportunity at the time. And I saw it as it's not perfect, it's difficult, but I think it's a critical issue that sometimes needs a critical decision. And it has opened my eyes to how scared people are to speak out to deal short-term rentals. And I think going forwards into a rezoning process, that has to be center stage. How do we create a process where people feel safe to speak out? Because the reality is that the commercialization of homes in Tofino affects every single person here, and it affects lots of people who are no longer here because of that. So that's my position. I still support council. I'm willing to move if the majority of council, that's the way it goes. I'm fine, and I will certainly back all of council. But that's my 2 bits. Consistent, but I do hear people's do hear the anxiety and the fear, and there's lots of stuff going on besides right here. Councillor Sawyer.
Yeah, thank you, and sorry for jumping again.
Oh, it's okay. No. I could be quiet and just go under the radar, but I feel like that's my job.
Fair. I drank too much coffee today. Councillor McMaster did have his hand up though. Comment.
I was just going to give a couple of examples. You've heard me mention Devon in Cornwall, Newquay in Cornwall, which is a tourist town. In 2019, 500 long-term rentals were listed. 4 years later, 2 long-term rentals were listed and 500 Airbnbs. Look at Yarrow in Oklahoma, which Councillor Steer might know. STRs jumped from 400 to 2,400 in 5 years after the pandemic. Town didn't have the infrastructure or the police force to cope. Population increased from 219 to 50,000 on a weekend. The bubble burst. Peak occupancy dropped by over 40%. And also house prices dropped, which affects both renters and visitors and residents. So those are a couple of extreme examples. There's lots of studies. You've got to look at small town America, you've got to look at small towns in Europe, and you're seeing the same things in the big cities, San Francisco, Barcelona, London. So you can say we're a small town with nuances, but we still have the same problems with high rents, high cost of housing. We're not building houses for people to live in, for people to retire in. You don't build a honking big house to retire in. We're building houses to make money.
Sloan.
Yeah, I've been kind of wondering, and I don't know if anyone will be able to answer my question. Is there any way that we could make this a community decision and not a council decision? Because I also have heard people who are afraid to come up and speak. And I do have concerns that I am maybe hearing the loud voices, not all of the quiet voices. And I just think if we believe that there is maybe the silent majority out there, then if we could bring it to the community, it could be a decision that is made by the community.
That's that's a comment. I mean, we are elected to represent the community, and we have a duty. And I did ask this question to senior politicians who have lots of experience. I said, what do I do when I'm confronted with people who are afraid to write a letter, or they're afraid to put their name on something because of retribution or threats or intimidation, which we know is real. And the answer I got back was that we are elected to be their voice, the voice of the vulnerable, the voice of people who are afraid and can't speak. So that's one thing to remember. The real thing is, I mean, we look at a petition, like, we get a petition. In this case, we got a petition with the 400, I think it's 400 signed or something like that. Like, we know how many people live here, how many adults there are here. So that gives an idea. It's not a democratic tool, because it's in that case, a petition is to represent a voice. If we were going to do something as council, there's options, and what you have is basically on a ballot where people are, they're safe because they go into a ballot. Nobody knows who votes on the question. The question is not biased. Are you in favor of principal residence requirement or not? And that would be something that, maybe you could stick something in. There's rules around the community charter on doing those things, how they're handled, but that's one way that you would level the playing field and give everybody a voice. And any elected person could then go and say, this is what I want. But that's one option. That's just off the top of my head. But we're elected, and we're elected to make difficult decisions, and people are not going to be happy with all our decisions, and that's the reality. But we still have to make difficult decisions, and we have to try to find, try to weigh the reasons. And we may have, maybe somebody's voice, maybe their opinion, their argument is not that reasonable. We have, that's what we're here for. We have to do that. And I'm confident that council has really actually thought about that. And I know we're not all, we all bring our different opinions, but I think we're all rational, reasonable people care about them. We're willing to do these things. And clearly we're willing to make difficult decisions. There's options, but the danger is I think the danger, and maybe I'm going further than your answer, is to not be courageous enough to make this difficult decisions. Unfortunately, that's not always an option. You just have to at some point. And quite frankly, I think the reason we're here is because maybe, well, for a bunch of reasons, but part of it is that maybe people don't want to make difficult decisions. Or for whatever reason, I don't know. There's multiple reasons why we're here, and I'm not going to think about them right now, but this is the one before us. So that's my opinion. But anybody else, Council Steer, you got something to say?
And through the chair and in deference to Councillor, sorry, I think maybe a couple more discussions before you brought a motion onto the table, just and so that we can have the debate on at this point in time. And I think one of the key things for me and in the initial debates and conversations around into Bill 35 and Council and Mayor Law is correct. We did have engagement and discussion and debate at the council table, and viewpoints were brought forward. There was engagement and some may consider limited engagement with the public, but the council had clear conversations, and one of the things that resonated initially was what were the objectives of council for opting into Bill 35, and that took a lot of conversation, and correct me if I'm wrong, anyone on council, of course, but because I asked the question several times of council to be clear in our objectives. And if I understood correctly, and I'll look to some of the other council members to correct me if I'm wrong, was that we were concerned about affordability of that. We were concerned about rentals, the ability to bring housing stock back into the marketplace. There was also concerns around quality of life, around neighborhoods being impacted by short-term rentals, and we actually were fortunate enough that we have bylaw that records complaints, and so we could get that information. So there were a number of objectives that were talked about, in my understanding, of bringing it in, and there was a tool that that the province had made available to communities. As everyone is well aware, Tofino was exempt as an RMI community, as were communities under 10,000. But we had the option to utilize that as a tool to regulate an industry. And I heard the word Wild West. To a certain degree, that is true. And so there's also, in those conversations, it became clear that there was also an ideological understanding, and I think almost everybody at the table agreed, and Mayor Law spoke to the commodification and the commercialization of housing and as its prime purpose to house people. And I don't think there was any dispute among council about that. And I hold that true as well, that the prime purpose of housing is to house people. And that's an important consideration in that debate. So the tool that was available, one of the tools that was available was Bill 35, and we had good discussion around that. And some of the concerns I had around Bill 35 at the time revolved around not clear information around the bill itself. And also that I felt that and as Councillor McMaster pointed out, there are many examples of small communities out there that has tourism as primary economy and some of the challenges that exist within there. But I will say that Tofino it is unique, and it's maybe we're biased in that, but that Tofino is unique, and we do have an issue with short-term rentals. But we also, I felt at the time that there were very valuable tools that not only had Tofino already embarked upon, such as a principal residency requirement, and the ability for those that had those properties that they had to come into compliance by building what we're referring to as caretakers, which provided a level of tenancy for many people, as we've heard throughout the community. And so I had concerns around that potential there, and we had those rules. We also have talked about, and many people in this room have heard us talk about our zoning bylaw review. And zoning is a very powerful tool. And there may be some misunderstanding within the community about what that tool has the potential to do. And so that will be a debate that we are going to be engaged in and later. And as we know, that those timeframes have been pushed back. But it's certainly a time, again, where that conversation is going to come forward about ways that we can ensure the objectives that we're setting out specifically around housing, equity, and affordability. And so those were some of the tools that we have. We also have, in terms of housing as a primary concern, we have known that this has been an issue for a long time. We created the Tofino Housing. Well, we recreated the Tofino Housing Corporation in 2018. So I want to be clear that the district has done I think an excellent job of addressing the issue of housing. It is still an issue, no question. But through a Tofino housing strategy, through our recognition of the impacts that short-term rentals had, we created a primary residency requirement. So I felt that Tofino had the tools to create a legislation or a bylaw that it would allow us to mitigate some of those potential issues that are obviously resonating with many people in this community. And I will also look to Councillor Sawyer, who's one of my main concerns, of course, was the tenancy of people and the security of their housing. And that's why in those initial conversations, I was interested to hear what my fellow councillors felt about Bill 35 and the protection of those housing potentials for the community. So I think everyone at this table had very clear intent about the importance of protecting that for our community and relatively speaking. And we just came about it. We may have come about it from different perspectives, but I think everybody at this table, and I can't speak for them all, but truly believed that they were thinking in the best interest of the community. And so the reason I'm still and when we made a collective decision to opt into Bill 35, that becomes a collective decision of this council. So there has been conversations about being on one side or being on another. There are no sides in this debate, to be honest. We really are looking out in our individual views of the importance of this topic to the community. And so I still believe that we have the ability as a council with community engagement. We've already had our chamber speak to the fact that they were willing to participate in those kinds of conversations, as well as I'm sure many members in this room. But I also want to reiterate that we also have to have those voices that have been afraid to speak up, participate in those conversations to ensure that we have a wide and varied opinion on this. And so I'll leave it there and allow my fellow councillors to weigh in. But I thought it was important to understand why there were some other viewpoints on there. And so thank you, Chair, for allowing me.
Yeah, maybe I'll just say, I don't talk too much, but you know, the other thing too is times change. We know the times have changed. Tofino today is different than Tofino 3 years ago or 6 years ago. And I just, you know, remind people of that conversation that we had, that the principal residence requirement goes all across BC except for some communities with exemptions. That changes supply and demand. Short-term rentals, and we did talk about this. We have about 500 single detached homes, you know, and approximately, if I'm not mistaken, I could ask how many short-term rental licenses, about 300 short-term rentals. Now, if you add on somewhere about there, just a roundabout number, and if you add on the staff accoms for the remaining 200 single detached homes, that's whittled right down. Whittled right down. Now, opting in, you know, we have essentially for a year now stalled or even stopped the purchase sale of those homes to short-term rental investment purchases. That's what we've done. I think that's pretty clear. If we hadn't done that, we would have been maybe one of the only resort communities like us with wide open short-term rental remissions. And some of those homes would have gone. I'm fairly convinced of that myself. And I do remember the conversation being that the chances of getting zoning review and rewrite done in any timely manner was slim, and that turns out to be the case. So, you know, maybe not foreseeable, but that's the way it is. So I think that there was a lot more things going on, and we did discuss all this. It was very, very in-depth, and I don't want to forget some of those things that we talked about because the moment right now is tense, and there are people that are very unhappy about that decision. I understand that. Just want to throw that back out there. Councillor Sloman.
Yeah, that argument is one of the reasons why I did make my previous decision, and I do hear that concern. I do feel though that because we've done this already, I feel if I was looking at our market to buy, I think that's I would not, because we've already done this and we could do it again in the future. So I feel we do have some protection because we have done this before.
Councillor Thomas.
Well, I don't think that would hold anyone back from purchasing. Sorry, through the chair. I don't think the fear of potentially more restrictions coming down the road will stop anybody from making an investment. I think people would make an investment and then they would join the people in this room in being loud and potentially intimidating to locals who do live here.
Clarify, nobody in this room has been loud or intimidating right now.
Right now, everybody's very.
That's clear. Make sure the remain respectful of people. Councillor Sawyer.
Just a comment for discussion too, and that, you know, our bylaws do still control what short-term rentals can do alongside the legislation. So, you know, we still do have you know, requirement of a long-term tenant on the property that wouldn't go away
If
we were to opt out.
no, it'd be just it's just enforcement.
It would be difficult to enforce, and I hear that, but you know, what I'm hearing from a lot of people, and I can't say I agree with the sentiment that people don't want to sign leases with their tenants, because I think that that's a very fair thing to do. and it's something that many people enjoy, that security. However, what I'm hearing is that people don't necessarily have a problem with someone living on their property. They have a problem with the style of the lease that would be required under Bill C-35. So something I'd want to be very clear about in the discussion today is that I'm strongly in favor of long-term tenants on properties. I'm not speaking to this at all saying like, oh yeah, people should totally just be allowed to lie and not have a long-term tenant and, you know, throw an RV on there and say that their cousin Bob lives in it or whatever. You know, like, I think we really do need to, you know, enforce that. It's just that the style may not be feasible, or that they may not permit that style of lease, and they will kick their tenants out, which is awful. What's motivating me to speak today.
You need to point out when we talk about the zoning, there's a lot of people who said to me that we should control things by zoning. A lot of people don't realize that there's no grandfathering anymore. So you might be doing a short-term rental now and think if you do the zoning, you're going to be safe because of grandfather, but that regulation has changed.
And we mentioned before, zoning is very, very, this conversation is difficult. Yeah. Ms. Tatiana?
Yeah, if I may, a few comments have come up, and I just want to maybe start with reminding council that at the last meeting, I said staff are not prepared to return to a meeting to discuss the merits of opting in or opting out, and I certainly won't. I won't be going there with my comments, but if a little bit of discussion has happened around the table, and I think I'd like to respond to, if you don't mind. There's some comments about how the public can. When I wrote my report to council, I avoided discussing the merits of whether Tofino should opt in or not, and I still refrain from having an opinion on that matter. Today, when I'm hearing the difference in opinions and the divisiveness in the community and where council is at with this matter, it's not a comfortable position, I think, for any of us to be in. It's been, you know, very good. The public process that we go through for decision making with respect to zoning, I want to be really clear about that. That's a legislative framework. It's a framework that communities use to discuss land use with their community. While council is elected, it is areas public consultation with respect to zoning. I want to be, you know, I want council to be very careful with what we may talk about during zoning, because that is a public, you know, ideas and thoughts and priorities and objectives can be brought forward, but we need to include the community in that discussion. And when Councillor Sloman mentioned earlier, can the community be involved in making this decision? And while there are tools out there like that, this was a very quick decision that council made about land use, and that put, I think, council and the community in a difficult position, because when municipalities at a local level discuss land use, we do it in a very formulaic way. We do it with a significant amount of process. And so I just want to remind us to be careful when we talk about zoning and not go, you know, too far with what we will be talking about. I think we have to do it at the time when that comes up. You know, it's been talked about previously when we're talking about opting in or opting out. It's not necessarily one or the other. It could be a combination of efforts. It's been a combination of things that have worked in the past. When we amended the bylaws in 2019, we spoke at length, and the zoning amendments took a significant amount of time, because that public consultation, that's where the process can take longer, and it should take longer, because those changes are set in stone, put in place. Often forever, zoning bylaws is from 1997. I'd like to maybe just on the last point, touch on enforcement of short-term rentals. We've put a significant amount of resources, tax dollars into enforcing short-term rentals. We've done a good job of that as staff, and I have, previous staff here in the room or maybe listening tonight, and I want to make sure that we acknowledge. I want to acknowledge their hard work of enforcing the short-term rentals under existing bylaws. As taxpayers, it was supported to have a business license inspector on staff, and we made significant progress with enforcing short-term rentals. I'm not saying it's perfect, and I want to put that on the record that their enforcement is ongoing and it's required and you have to be on top of it. And the moment you're not, it can fall apart. So I don't want to negate the resources that council has made decisions towards that. We have this council, previous councils have made significant efforts towards enforcement. So again, I'm not speaking today to the merits of opting in or opting out. As a final note, I've seen very divisive issues come through this council in my short 15 years with the district almost. And paid parking is one of them. It was difficult. Building a wastewater treatment plant was difficult. This is difficult, and zoning has been a difficult conversation. I think it takes care and attention to move through these issues. I was reminded last point. I was reminded of.
I want to make sure that this is a discussion with council and be very clear on that.
Yeah, I mean, I was reminded of a time not too long ago where members of the public came to a council meeting to fight for the skate park, and today we have a skate. And I think that when council is elected to make this decision, constituents' voices, I think, need to be a part of the land use decision, which was the purpose of my March 12th report, not the merits of opting in.
Sorry, Chair, just a point of privilege. My bladder's going to explode. I apologize. Could I have 1 or 2 minutes?
Sure, absolutely. We can have this. Do you want to call a recess for 2 minutes, or you want to come back? Let's do a quick recess. Point of recess. We give 5 minutes. We've talked over the year and last year, and I think rehashing stuff. So I think Councillor Sawyer, you had a request to do the motion, and I said reconvene. Sorry. Would you like to talk about your motion, explain what you're...
Yeah, thank you. I want to bring something that I felt would be supported by the council and also by the community. I wanted to recognize the fact that a lot of people are asking for answers and information, and that any decision we make should be well discussed and in public view. And so I prepared a motion to ask that staff be authorized to prepare a consultation and engagement plan regarding opting out of the principal residence requirement under Bill C-35 in 2026 and report back to council prior to February 1st, 2026. I feel that this would add depth and engagement alongside the economic impact assessment that the Chamber of Commerce has asked for. I also feel like I believe that the community wants open and engaging discussion, and that everyone needs some time to talk to their neighbors, and maybe with slightly less pressure on their shoulders, because so many people are feeling really wound up right now. And I'd like to see this discussion just go forward meaningfully, but well thought out.
Okay, I'll second it. Are you going to second it?
Well, I was going to say, through the chair, if I could just get clarity on the motion, so you're writing down just clarity on the motion, Councillor Sawyer.
You want to read the motion without and then you've already kind of spoke to it, so why don't you read it as it's written?
That staff be authorized to prepare a consultation and engagement plan regarding opting out of the principal residence requirement under Bill C-35 in 2026 and report back to council prior to February 1st, 2026.
Sorry, that.
Second by Mr. Steer. Okay. I will look to council. We can do one round. Start with the Councilor McMaster. I think we started the other one. Let's start with you next.
Yeah, I mean, I can support that. My question is, just like we discussed for the last 20 minutes, is how we protect people being scared to speak up, sort of intimidated. I'd like to see what staff would do to do that. I'd actually move forward with that. The idea in principle, I like, you've got to be able to protect people.
Take notes.
I have no further comments. I think we've taught this one well, and I thank you for your reiteration of creating a safe environment for those differentiating viewpoints to be able to come to the table in a civil and safe.
Thomas.
My only concerns are what other priorities staff might have for how this will impact zoning or if it can happen alongside zoning. I don't want to sideline anything that we're working on. I respect the merit of it. I too would like to see some sort of channel where people could safely communicate. I know the last time we did consultations, there was a lot of in-person stuff, which was very valuable, but created a difficult situation for some people. I don't know what channels would be for that. And I just wonder on if the wording is a little leading in one way or the other, just to asking them to look at the merits of opting out. I don't know if there's a more neutral way we can word it. But if that's the easiest way to leave it, then I don't want to get bogged down and terminologies.
Okay. Okay, Councilor Anderson.
I didn't know. Something I haven't had much time to think about it, but it certainly could support that. I was kind of thinking of timelines though on a couple of things. How is this going to end up coloring or driving the bus on the whole zoning review process? It's a bit of a worry. Should it be done and based on the staff report? So that's, you know, maybe a concern, maybe not. I guess now that council has already considered opting out, I believe at the last council meeting where I wasn't there. Let's be off the table at this point. We could be opting out and then considering the benefits of opting in. For we're looking at if we do look at that, have a good look at it, it'll take us 2 Novembers to get there. So that's a long time. So I don't think it satisfies the current requests of council, but we've been struggling with these short timelines on all the decisions. We got a short timeline last year to decide to opt in or out, but a short timeline this year after the detailed regulations came out to react to that. This gives us the longer timeline we want, but you know, it's not been a very good process. Part of that's been dealt to us, we've had very little time to make these decisions. So yes, I would like to take the time. I would like to engage the public. I'd like to bring in ideas from the chamber. And then let our, whatever, our own work plan and strategic plan somehow still occur and not have this drive the bus on everything. So, yeah, it's a good idea, but it's not, it isn't perfect. But we're dealing with imperfect timelines all around. Yeah, I'll support it. And it's the best idea we've got.
Councillors, so you're in line, I mean, you already spoke, but you can speak as keep going down line.
Yeah, thank you. I also just want to add that I do support all of council's decisions that we come to in a vote. And you know, if this goes through and the public consultation goes through and we vote to opt in again, I am hoping that this longer timeline will allow us to really talk to the community and have the community talk to us and have everyone understand what's happening, because I don't want to be talking about this every 6 months or a year. I really hope that the decision we make will be the right decision, at least for like 5 years would be great.
My concerns with this amendment, I like the timeline, but I just feel that I've had tenants come to me who are facing housing insecurity, and I don't know if this would in comforting them and providing them housing security if their landlords are going to be moving in for the summer or the fall even. So I would prefer to see us opt out and then visit this timeline. So then we've done one, done another. My preference.
Well, I've got, I think I've got majority of council are in support of this motion. And with it, I think it would give us time to get the zoning review underway, hopefully completed before we make further changes. So maybe that's in tandem, maybe that would happen. It makes sense to me that if we're going to make a decision to opt out, the after zoning review is done, and this may dovetail into what the zoning review is. Fine with it. It's kind of a bit of both, but it's great. All right. Any further discussion amongst council? Going once, going twice, thrice. Okay, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed, motion's carried. Thank you. And Councillor, or sorry, she sent in.
Yes, there is a motion to receive the report as well.
Oh, God. Motion to support. But before, I would like to say something. Before we go on to the next, make a motion. I just want to say that this is a very, very difficult topic, and I very much appreciate everybody's demeanor, their civility. I know this is very difficult, but I just very much appreciate my community, that we can discuss difficult things and not burn each other's house down or kill each other. So I very much appreciate it. Somebody like to read the motion, please?
I move that the report titled Bill 35 Principal Residence Requirement dated March 11th, 2025 be received for information.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Master. Any further questions? All in favor? Opposed, motion
Okay. Okay, we have a temporary use permits. Item 10.2. We have urban systems.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can everybody hear me
Cannot.
okay?
I don't think we can hear you.
Okay. How about now?
Good.
Okay, great. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kara Gross. I'm a community planner with Urban Systems, and I'm joined tonight by my colleague Brittany Tuttle to discuss the temporary use permit application at 1141 Pacific Rim Highway and to answer any questions that may arise. So, subject property, like I said, it's located at 1141 Pacific Rim Highway. Property is currently zoned A1 small holdings district and is now is designated as ocean interface in the OCP. The property has been operating as a residential staff accommodation campground under multiple temporary use permits and subsequent renewals since 2016, as outlined in the staff report. The first TUP was issued in August of 2016 and renewed in September of 2018, while a second TUP was issued in October of 2021 and, after a change in ownership, was renewed in April of 2022. Around the time of the 2022 TUP renewal, the current owner submitted a rezoning application for the purpose of formalizing a change of use to facilitate development of permanent staff housing accommodation on the site. It's important to note that this application has received permission to proceed back in October of 2023, but the rezoning process has been delayed as a result of unclear policy language within the OCP, which is requiring clarification by a text amendment, which is a process that is also underway. The TUP application before you today was received by the district in July of 2024 in anticipation of the current TUP expiring on April 30th of 2025. The applicant is seeking the maximum term of 3 years, as they want to ensure that the campground, which is an affordable 32-site residential campground that provides staff accommodation for individuals employed by a local business, can continue to operate for the duration of the rezoning process. Should this application be denied, the current TUP will expire at the end of April, and the property owner will be required to cease the operation of the existing staff accommodation campground and remove any structures that have been built to support the use no later than 3 months after the expiry date. This TUP supports a use which meets the immediate need for affordable staff housing by providing staff accommodation for up to 50 individuals. It aligns with the district's overall guiding principles and policies for temporary use permits and is considered a bridge to a permanent change of use. The proposal has also been considered in relation to the district's limits to growth policy, which requires all proposed development that may incur an increase in water demand to receive a water allocation certificate. However, as this application seeks the continued operation of an existing use, there's no net increase in water demand anticipated, and so no water allocation certificate is required in respect of this TUP application. The temporary use permit includes specific conditions under which the residential staff campground may operate. This includes limiting the use to a maximum of 32 total units of staff accommodation, up to a maximum of 50 occupants. It requires the owner to enter into an amended housing agreement with the district to ensure that tenants are locally employed, rental rates are managed for affordability, and standards of safety are maintained. It limits residency of the campground to individuals that are employed by a local business and ensures that residents are not members of the traveling public. And it also requires at minimum stays of 30 consecutive days. The TUP also includes conditions to mitigate potential nuisances, including noise, unkemptness, waste management, and drainage, and requires the property owner to provide a security in the amount of $5,000 to cover any potential costs incurred by the district
with respect to the expiry of the temporary use permit and or ensuring that the conditions of the TUP are met. As per the requirements of the Local Government Act and the District's Development Approval Procedures Bylaw, notices were mailed and hand delivered to surrounding neighbors within a 60-meter radius of the subject property on February 28th, and notification was also provided in the February 26th edition of the Westerly newspaper. Copy of the proposed TUP has been made available for interested residents through direct contact with the planning department for the last 10 days. But at this time, no public comments have been received regarding this application. As such, the recommendation put forth to council is that staff be authorized to issue temporary use permit attached as Appendix 1 to report temporary use permit -1141 Pacific Rim Highway staff campground dated March 11th, 2025 to permit the operation of a 32 site residential campground for a period of 3 years. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Super, Ms. Gross, thank you very much for that presentation. I'm going to open it up to questions, council for clarity. Ms. Gross, if there are any. Seeing none. Oh, Councilor McMaster.
Just a question on the rezoning. What have you been told? How long that will take?
So the rezoning, like I sort of mentioned, sorry, and through the chair, the rezoning application was received by the district around the same time that the previous TUP was renewed. And at that time in 2022, it was anticipated that the rezoning application could be completed before the TUP expired in that 3-year period, which is at the end of April of this year. And the reason for that is that their staff interpreted the language in the OCP as contradictory to itself and have been pursuing a text amendment to the OCP sort of on an ongoing basis. And that OCP amendment is hopefully going to affect a number of rezoning applications that relate to the ocean interface designation. But because all development approvals are considered on a case-by-case basis, we can't really make any assumptions about the rezoning application for this property based on that OCP amendment. And so, again, that is why the applicant is seeking a full term of 3 years, because we thought that 3 years would be sufficient last time, and it unfortunately was not. So hopefully 3 years to answer your question.
Thank you. Question, you got a question for?
No, I was just question. Question. No, I was gonna.
Let me just, okay, great. Ms. Gross, thank you for that. Gross, sorry.
Gross.
Is it Gross? Gross or Gross? Gross?
Yes.
Thank you. So you're off the hook. You don't have to sit down. I guess you're just gonna sort of, there you go. You're off the hook. So we can open up any discussion. Seeing none. Would somebody like to read the motion?
I would like to make a motion that staff be authorized to issue the temporary use permit attached as Appendix 1 to report temporary use permit 1141 Pacific Rim Highway staff campground date March 11, 2025 to permit the operation of a 32 site residential campground for a period of 3 years.
Second by Councilor McMaster. Any further comments? Seeing none, all in favor? Just carried. None opposed, Mr. Chairman.
Great. We have 10.3 tangible capital asset policy amendment. Mr. Andre.
We have do you have, don't, no.
This is what everyone's been waiting for, Dan, for this.
Yeah, I know. Okay, I don't think there's any discussion on this. This is really housekeeping.
Okay, I'll move that the amendments to District of Tofino tangible capital policy, adopted on May 26, 2009, and shown in Appendix 2 to the staff report titled Tangible Capital Asset Policy Amendment, dated March 11, 2025, be approved.
Councilor Rickle. And second by Councilor Thomas. Further discussion? All in favor? None opposed, motion is carried. We have the minutes of the public
Art Advisory Committee. And I believe we have two recommendations. Would somebody like to volunteer to read those recommendations? Councilor Anderson.
I'll move those as chair of that committee. The quick introduction, these are public art installations that will go on wastewater treatment structures in the downtown. And a quick turnaround timeline on these as the budget for them. Hang out of the liquid waste water treatment funding. The short time window in March, so a little bit of budget left over to some parties, which will consist of nation's art and some photographic. Okay, I'll move the recommendations that the minutes of the Public Art Advisory Committee meeting held March 28, 2025 be received.
Second by Councilor Thomas. Any further comments? All in favor? None opposed, motion carried.
And I'll move that the Public Art Advisory Committee recommend to council that Ivy Cargill Martin be selected to provide an image for wastewater treatment plant shed public art project located at First Street and be awarded $1,000 for use of their artwork. And that the Public Art Advisory Committee recommend to council that Spencer Bowden be selected to provide an image of the wastewater treatment plant shed public art project located at Main Street and be awarded $1,000 for use of their artwork.
Second by Councilor Thomas. Any further comments? Unopposed, motion. Okay, we have no bylaws, we have unfinished business. Unfinished business. Business initiated by council members. It's going to go around the room. Councilor Steer.
Just a quick update on the West Coast Community School Society meeting on February 26th. And just a quick update for council. Once again, our community slots between 4 and 7 that we're responsible for are fully booked and utilized primarily by some of the Tla-o-qui-aht First Nation basketball teams, as well as many of the community members. Also, there's this year there was 9 different programs, or this term, 9 different programs being run. Everything from Swifty Club to fly fishing, casting, with an average of about 20 students. Everyone's laughing, but yeah, it was really important. 20 students per day. And finally, not finally, SD 70, the yearly funding has been secured for the year, which is great news. And then in conversation with staff at the Community School Society, we will have a presentation. Well, they're going to look to staff as a delegation to present to council on all things wonderful at the Wiccan Community School Society. And we're hoping for the April 23rd meeting. Oh, no, that's fine. Anyways, the April meeting of council.
And is there anything else for council? Mr. Sawyer?
Yeah, thank you. I just have an update from Vancouver Island Regional Library Board of Trustees. In February, we had our AGM and we have a new vice chair, Jonathan Lerner of Lansville. And Jonathan's someone that has been extremely supportive on the board so far, and I'm very excited to see. I also was appointed to the executive committee again on that board.
Super duper. Just a question for Councillor Sawyer on that. Was Director Boyko from the ACRD, was he elected to the executive?
I can't tell you. There is 2 new faces.
Yeah.
I can't remember their names right now. Sorry.
Thank you. I believe so. Okay.
Great. Anything else? Business initiated by council. Okay. Right. Question periods. Ms. Pelstran. Question period. Call.
Thank you, Mayor Law. We'll now make an open call for questions. For those in the gallery who wish to speak, please raise your hand. If there is anyone attending online via Zoom that would like to ask a question, you can now using the Q&A function. Before asking a question, you will need to state your name, your address, and the agenda item you're speaking. I will now do a call calling once. I see that there's someone, a member of the, I would like to ask a question, but I will continue on doing my call. I will now do a call calling twice. And calling 3 times. We have 3 or 4 members.
Okay.
No?
I'm afraid I do not have my glasses on. Whoever put their hand up first, Mr. Dare.
Oh, I come up back.
So this is just a little overview. This is questions for council. We'll try to attempt to answer them. If we can't answer them, we'll get back to you if we can. And you have 2 minutes.
Yeah. I would love to know what would be required to have a referendum, because I also would love to hear from other community members in a democratic way. So what would be required to have a referendum?
So maybe that's a question for our corporate services, because I know there's a whole background to holding a referendum. So what we'll do is we'll get our corporate services to get back to you with that specific information. Mr. McCall will do that. There was somebody else with their hand up, I believe. Forgive me, I am not angry, I'm just going to. Just state, if you can state your name and your address.
My name is Kyle Mahar. My address is 368 Main Street. I was wondering if yourselves did consider that some of us on this side fear retribution in a different way. And if I can rely on this table to be unbiased for any of us on this side for the future business endeavors we might bring in front of you.
Yes.
You understand me?
I think I got you, but just the retribution from, sorry, say it again. I'm so sorry.
I or somebody that maybe differed opinions of this table and was vocal or brave enough, maybe it's the word, to talk. If you considered the fear or threat that we might have for retribution, should we have business matters in front of you?
Okay, thank you. Well, I'm just going to speak for myself and council that there is no and there will be no retribution or thought of retribution or bias against anybody that comes to council for any matter, and that is that's an absolute as an elected body. That's a clear thing. And if there is any evidence of anything like that, then certainly that's it.
I think my question was, did you consider that on this side, we had a measurable threat as well, or a perceived threat being public?
Yes, I had actually thought about it.
You bring that up at the table today?
Did I bring it up at the table today? I don't think anybody mentioned it, but I had thought about it. We've got 2 more people with their hands up, so 3 more people with their hands up, and I don't know who was first, but maybe is that Miss Greenland?
Hey guys, good job. I guess like my question here is, it just feels really.
Just I'm sorry.
I have to say my name and my address.
Greenland. Right, yes, please.
Okay, Erica Greenland, 690 Campbell Street. From my seat, it felt really obvious that a lot of the voices today, be it on video, speaking, and perhaps in letter, were in favor of opting out. And I look at each of you counselors, how come you didn't put a motion forward to opt out for 2025? Sarah?
Well, I had already brought a motion forward in the last discussion. Thank you. And so I want to be respectful of my council. And I spoke first and I want to see how they were feeling today. And then Councillor Sawyer said she was gonna make a motion.
Yeah, thanks. And Ally, thanks for doing a motion. I personally feel it's a little too long for what's at hand. Why did you do that?
Yeah, I'll answer if you allow it. I presented the motion I did because for one thing, I wanted to bring something forward that I felt would be able to be discussed by the community.
Yeah, we need that.
This is a really big voice, but it's coming out really fast. And given that no matter what happens, we would have still had this summer be affected the next year. I didn't see that a decision to opt out today would have just totally alleviated any of the effects of the bill. And so I chose to err on the side of presenting a motion that would give us enough time to actually have this discussion the way it should be had.
I know a lot of owners, maybe you guys haven't considered it, but a lot of owners could make do with the 6 months of cancellations if they knew that we were opting out for February 2025, if those dates are correct. So it is staying opted out is gonna have a huge impact. Eventually, like,
Questions?
yeah, I'll let you up, yeah.
We're gonna keep it to 2 minutes.
It's my understanding that that motion was considered at the last council meeting.
It was not.
It was not.
Well, this is a time for council to answer questions. The person at the rate, I just have to make that clear.
Okay, then
I appreciate you
I
being in the room this
in the
time.
council chambers during the discussion
Yeah.
last time. So I didn't know. I thought that's what was being considered, because there were two motions put forward and one was defeated. And the one that was defeated, I thought was about opting out.
Forget about it.
We do have 2 minutes for things. We can get all around the table, so. Call it.
Yeah.
Can I ask the councillors what they did things?
Yeah. Thanks.
Back to you. Okay, now there's two, where were we at for, we got a 10-minute time limit. Where are we at here?
6 more.
6 more minutes, got lots of time. 6 more minutes, so we'll go to the back there.
There you go.
Lockie McKenzie, 365 Nail Street. You know what, well, I really hear through the conversation today, Councillor Thomas brought up the, feeling intimidated and, people potentially threatening. There's no place for that sort of thing. I think this is a conversation that should be carried out in a respectful environment, which I think most people have been. And to speak to just the, I guess, to the people who are not willing to either speak up or put a name on a letter. And I'm wondering, I know that a lot of people that are here care about long-term housing and voted for some of you who we now find ourselves on the other side of. But we voted for you because we do care about public housing or about having long-term housing in town. It is important. So I would suggest that there's a portion of the people that did vote for you that are like, you don't necessarily have to be on one side or the other. So I think that does sort of make up for a bit of that. My question is for Councillor Thomas, and I'm just gonna read it here. Given that the opt-in process is expected to pressure some current owners to sell below market value, do you see a correlation between this outcome and the fact that the biggest beneficiaries will be those looking to acquire properties at discount, many of whom may prefer to stay silent and anonymous rather than engage directly with impacted owners?
That's a fair question. I kind of spoke off the cuff and I made that comment, and it probably wasn't appropriate to say that people that would purchase would be of a particular mindset or even a particular voice or volume. And there's the potential that, you know, we heard from somebody today who talked about how they want to buy a house. They're anticipating, hoping, like we're talking to a community member, and they're also saying that these houses won't be affordable for them. So I think we need to preserve our housing stocks that we have. Sure, there's the potential for people to come in and purchase them, and maybe they'll let them sit empty. Maybe that'll assist with some of their water usage. Maybe they'll live in there and within that, which they'd be in their right to do. I feel that somebody can live in their house and have a vacation rental in the house. I was open from the start before I ran about owner occupied being something I was interested in. And this was an opportunity that the province provided, and I feel strongly about it.
I guess I
Your time, I'm sorry, Mr. Your time's up. You're actually almost 3 minutes, so we're gonna give it to the next person.
Bill in the yellow hat has had a hand up.
Pardon me?
Bill in the yellow hat has had a hand up.
Yep.
Mayor Law, if I may, there is someone signed up for a question on via Zoom as well.
Okay, and what is the total time for this one? It seems like
10 minutes. 10 minutes, each member is available to ask their question within their 2 minutes.
Okay.
Council has
okay.
ability to respond.
Hey, my name is Dominga Tukarak. I live at 653 Pearly Place. I just wanted to bring attention to all the councillors here that what we heard from the district report there's still unclear answers for people like me who are operating an STR with a tenant as the principal resident. So we've had information from lawyers as well as accountants saying that this route is actually illegal if you want to take this route. So it's basically asking your tenant to commit tax fraud. So for all of us,
just a question.
I'm getting there. Okay, so for all of us, we're faced with. So the other thing too is it's going to trigger GST. So we're going to have to pay GST on the value of our house because we're changing. So this is all information that maybe council hasn't considered. We're changing the ownership type from short-term rental to long-term rental. If we go to a long-term rental, that will trigger GST. So there's huge implications for people like me right now. And I just want to ask you, like for me, with these huge implications, I'm looking at like, I pretty much would have to leave my house empty rather than rent it out to not deal with these GST tax implications, and also to not get into a legal fraud commitment. Like, do you think this is a better way to go? Like, is this really do you really think this is what you wanted? Is this the outcome you were hoping for when you opted into this and when you didn't choose to opt out today?
Thank you.
No, it's not.
Yeah, yes, you should cry. People are crying. I'll get over bills. She's so ashamed.
Yeah, I feel
I can't allow,
Stressed out.
I can't allow the comments from gallery.
I'd like to hear like just a short answer from each councillor if possible.
We have, everybody's got 2 minutes to ask the question. Get near the end, we're over. But we don't have time for every councillor to answer.
Okay.
Sorry. Time for every councillor to answer.
I'd like to ask Kat, because you're so dead set on this. I mean, you were my tenant.
I will break the rules just to. Pardon me?
I wanna know.
Pardon me? There's still time. Okay, so we'll.
Yeah, there's still the opportunity for owners to do long-term rentals.
No, I realize.
No,
like-
we don't.
Can't,
It cannot allow.
And you're talking about, preservation of you not having to pay taxes. But we're talking about running a business out of a home. We're talking about a home that could house people.
It is housing people. It's housing.
The distance. This is not a time,
And I appreciate you housed me, and you housed me in a home that was not doing a short-term rental. You provided
and I'm
housing and.
But my question to you though is.
Can't allow, guys.
But the question wasn't answered, like, do you think that like leaving my home empty and not housing people is better than housing people?
No, and that is a decision that you would be making. That's not a decision that I'm making.
Can afford it. Okay, I'm gonna bring them into it, right? If it was to be a tragedy for me, to call a recess and empty the gallery for the rest of the meeting, so please.
I just wanted to apologize for my loss of complete.
You don't have to apologize for anything. We're allowed to cry and be emotional. And we're allowed to do those things. It's completely safe for everybody to do those things.
Unless we're sitting on this side of it.
Okay, okay. Now, this is council's meeting. Council gets to debate and decide things here. And I made that clear at the beginning. Again, very end of the meeting would be a shame for me to quit the gallery. Now, one more question. If there's anybody left who wants to.
Ken Sadler is at his hand up.
Ken Sadler, please come up. You can, just one more question. And there is this is not a time for discussion, not a time for anything. This is a question for council and we'll try to answer it if we can. If we can't, we'll get staff to.
I'm Ken Sadler. I'm the owner at 1115 Fellowship Drive. And I'm just going to clarify it and I'll ask a question directly. And I think I'll direct it at staff because maybe they. Okay, so.
It has to be a question for council.
Okay, so for council.
We'll send it to staff and you can.
I just want to know whether when you went through this process that you were aware of the ramifications of when a tenant takes on the position of host and has to take out a lease, because I've just spoken with our accountants and our lawyers, and they have told us that that is what they have to do. They have to take a lease out for the entire house. By doing that, they immediately trip the GST situation. So my question to you is, were you aware of this when you agreed to opt in?
Question for council. I mean, I can answer as so. I was certainly aware that the host, there would be provincial requirements for the non-owner tenant to become the host, and the legislation was there. It's very similar to Q&amp's zoning bylaw, which requires.
I don't understand the question.
So I don't think you're quite understanding. I understand what you're saying, but are you aware of the financial aspect of how that affects the owner and the tenant in this situation?
Yeah.
Triggering GST.
Yeah, so I'll just give it in brief.
I gotta stop. I'm gonna stop comments from the gallery. I've mentioned many times now. I will not allow it. Mr. Sadler's trying to ask a question. We may not, may not have the answer.
Yeah, that's why I'm just trying to get it so that you can think about it.
Yeah.
A house that's $1 million, let's just say it's $1 million. The host takes out a lease, automatically triggers a 5% GST. So that's $50,000 that person has to come up with that year for the property.
For renting out, yeah, I'm not.
So what it's doing is it's changing from a short-term rental to a long-term tenant. And because the caretaker or the host is now taking on the responsibility of the entire property, that now becomes a long-term situation. And it now triggers the GST on that house. So that's what I'm asking. I'm asking you to look into it. And just be aware that now those that own that property have to make a decision on whether they're going to continue on, try to go with a vacation rental, or if they can't, due to the rules, leave it completely empty. So for the whole concept of being able to make it helpful for people to be able to rent out their homes, now it is another hindrance. So I hope I can make that as clear as possible to you, that there are huge ramifications financially for people in this situation. Thank you very much.
That's the question period. So I'll move from the chair that the meeting be closed to the public pursuant to section 91A(g) of the charter, discuss matters related to or another Asian or potential litigation affecting the municipality.